This is the big idea, the whole enchilada. The world isn't a bunch of dead physical stuff that, I don't know, through some cosmic accident just coughed up consciousness. No, the truth, this idea suggests, is the other way around. See, consciousness isn't some tiny little candle flickering in a vast dark universe. The universe itself is a grand projection inside of consciousness. It's a truth that's been hiding in plain sight, tucked away in our biggest blockbusters, just waiting for us to finally connect the dots. And this really sets up the central conflict for all of us. It's about two competing stories for what reality actually is. On one side, you've got the official story, the one we all learned in school, the story of materialism. And on the other, you have this incredibly powerful story that our best storytellers just keep showing us over and over and over again on the big screen. And the message is just shockingly consistent. I mean, think about it. In The Matrix, Neo realizes reality is totally bendable once he gets that it's all a mental construct. Bending the rules isn't a superpower, it's just waking up. There is no spoon isn't just a clever line, it's a literal statement about his world. In Inception, they build entire worlds out of pure thought. In Avatar, Jake Sully's mind pilots a different body, showing us that consciousness isn't locked into one piece of hardware. Doctor Strange takes this to a whole new level, showing a reality that can be literally folded and reshaped by a trained mind. Even in a show like Loki, the whole point is that our reality is shaped by the story we believe. Hollywood keeps spoon-feeding us this philosophy, and we just keep calling it entertainment. This right here shows the clash perfectly. On one side, you've got what you probably learned in biology class. You're a complex machine, a meat robot. Your awareness? Oh, that's just a weird accidental ghost in the machine, a byproduct of brain chemistry. The world is made of hard physical stuff. End of story. But our most powerful stories tell us something completely different. They say that you are the dreamer, that your consciousness isn't some random accident, it's the very foundation of everything, and that the world isn't made of physical stuff at all, but mental stuff, information, perception, and ideas. And here's the kicker. The old story, the meat robot story, is actually starting to fall apart under the weight of its own science. It's crumbling in real time. For all our amazing technology, neuroscientists have never, ever found consciousness in the brain. They can see what parts of the brain light up when you feel happy, sure, but they can't find the feeling itself. There's a huge gap. And then you look at quantum physics, and it turns out that physical stuff isn't solid at all. It's more like a ghostly cloud of possibilities that only becomes real when someone looks at it. So you have to ask, which story is the real science fiction? Okay, so let's dive into the first major crack in the foundation of that old story. It's a problem so big, so profound that they call it the hard problem of consciousness. And to really get it, we've got to go back to one of the most famous scenes in movie history, the moment Neo wakes up in that pod. So the philosopher David Chalmers gave this its famous name. The hard problem asks a really simple question that the old model has absolutely no answer for. How does a bunch of electricity zipping through the gray, wet meat in your skull create your inner, private experience of the color red, or the taste of a slice of pizza? Think of it like this. I can describe how a computer processes data for the color red. We can talk about wavelengths and pixels. That's the easy problem. But I can't explain why you experience the redness itself. There's nothing in physics that explains how a physical system just suddenly starts to feel something. It's the central mystery. And the old model is stumped. So, what if the whole model is just backward? The old way says the brain, a physical thing, somehow makes non-physical consciousness, but the idealist solution just flips the script. It says consciousness comes first, and it creates our experience of a brain. Let's go back to the Matrix. The old model says you're Neo in the pod, a physical body whose brain is dreaming up the Matrix. But what if the pod, the tubes, that whole dark machine world, what if that's also just another layer of the dream? In this view, consciousness isn't made by the brain. The brain is just an icon that shows up within consciousness. And just like that, poof, the hard problem just disappears. There's no gap to cross from matter to mind because it was all mind from the very beginning. All right, on to our second piece of evidence, which takes this whole idea one giant step further. Let's call this one waking up inside Inception. Now, in that movie, they all carry a totem, right? A little object to check if they're in the real world or a dream. But here's the thing that'll keep you up at night. You don't have a totem. How do you really know you're not in a dream right this very second? Go ahead. Seriously, try it. Touch the desk in front of you, or your chair, or the phone in your hand. It feels solid, doesn't it? Real. It feels like you are making direct contact with a world that's out there. This is the most basic assumption we make about our reality, every single moment of every single day. But what if that feeling of solidness is just part of the simulation? That assumption is completely wrong. You have never, not even once in your entire life, actually touched your desk. What you call touch is just the electromagnetic force field of the electrons in your fingers repelling the force field of the electrons in the desk. Your atoms never actually make contact. That feeling of pushback is just turned into an electrical signal sent up your arm to your brain, which then creates the rich, subjective experience of hard and smooth inside your mind. You aren't touching the world, you are only ever experiencing your brain's interpretation of it. Let's break this down, because this is so important. Even in the standard model of science, there are all these layers separating you from reality. So, step 1, we assume there's a real desk out there. Step 2, your senses gather raw data about it, photons, pressure, that kind of thing. Step 3, your brain acts like a super powerful graphics card, processing all that data. And finally, step 4, your consciousness gets to experience the final render, a stable 3D image and feeling of a desk. You are always and only interacting with the final render in your mind, never the actual thing. Your entire life has been lived inside a VR headset that you can't take off. And you know, this isn't some new age idea from the internet. The Irish philosopher George Berkeley figured this out way back in the 1700s. His famous line was, "To be is to be perceived." He basically argued that things like chairs and tables are just collections of sensations in our minds, and they don't really exist on their own without being perceived. A modern way to say it? The world is a shared virtual reality running on a universal consciousness, and we're all players wearing headsets we just haven't figured out how to remove yet. And that brings us to our third and final piece of evidence. And this is where science stops sounding like a textbook and starts sounding, well, like the script for a Doctor Strange movie. We're diving into the world of quantum mechanics. And believe me, it delivers a plot twist that just shatters our common sense view of reality. Okay, so check this out. In the famous double-slit experiment, if you shoot tiny particles at a wall with 2 slits, they act like a wave and somehow go through both slits at the same time. But, and this is the part that should make your hair stand on end, if you put a little detector there to see which slit it goes through, the very act of looking at it forces it to make a choice. It behaves like a solid particle, picks one slit, and the wave pattern is gone. That's the observer effect. The simple act of looking at reality changes what reality is. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist Eugene Wigner took this to its logical end. He argued it has to be consciousness itself, the act of a mind knowing something, that causes this wave of possibilities to collapse into one actual reality. It's like the universe waits for us to look before it makes up its mind. And if you thought that was weird, buckle up. Experiments like the delayed choice quantum eraser are going to break your brain. Okay, let's walk through this slowly. Imagine a photon was sent through one of those double-slit devices last week, but the information about which path it took was scrambled so nobody could know. So for an entire week, that photon just existed as a wave of pure possibility. Now today, you, the experimenter, can choose to either look at that scrambled path information or decide to erase it. And here's the impossible result. If you choose to look at the path information today, it turns out the photon acted like a solid particle last week. If you choose to erase the information today, it turns out the photon acted like a wave last week. Your choice right now in the present seems to have reached back in time and changed what happened in the past. Let's just be honest with ourselves. What I just described is not physics as we normally think about it. That's what our ancestors would have called magic. It's reality bending at the most fundamental level. The old story of a dead clockwork universe has no way to explain this without tying itself in absolute knots. But a philosophy like idealism, one that says reality is made of mind from the get-go, it handles this stuff perfectly. Of course the mind affects reality, if reality is a product of mind in the first place. Okay, so if we accept this evidence from our movies, from philosophy, from the cutting edge of physics, what does it actually mean for us? How does this change how we live our lives every day? Because this is more than just a cool thought experiment. This is about upgrading the entire operating system of your reality. Now, I can already hear the biggest objection. It's the first question everyone always asks. Okay, fine. If this is all a dream in my mind, why can't I just decide to fly, like Neo? Why can't I just think really hard and make $1 million appear on my desk? And you know what? It's a totally fair question, and the answer is actually pretty simple.
Here's the answer. You're not dreaming alone. The best way to think about it is that reality is like a massive multiplayer online game, and there are 8 billion other conscious players in it with you. Now, for a game like that to work, for it to be a stable and meaningful experience for everyone, there have to be consistent rules. Gravity has to work the same for you as it does for me. The laws of physics, they're just the game's code, the software that keeps this whole shared simulation from turning into total chaos. You can't just type in a cheat code and start flying, but you can learn the rules of the game so well that you can start to bend them in pretty amazing ways.
And this is where the real upgrades unlock. Once you really start to let this new worldview sink in, everything changes. The fear of death, for instance, starts to fade away. If you're the dreamer, your body is just your avatar in the dream. The game might end, but the player keeps going. Anxiety becomes more manageable. You start to see it for what it is, a mental rendering, just a weather pattern in your mind that you don't have to identify with. The idea of manifestation starts to sound less like woo-woo magic and more like programming. You realize you're a co-creator of your reality, that you can influence the code through your focus and intention. You stop living like a background character in someone else's story, and you finally activate that main character energy, because you get it. You are the protagonist of this incredible, epic story. So, if you only take one thing away from our little journey today, let it be this. This is your new operating system in one sentence. There is no spoon. There is no solid, separate external world that's happening to you. There is only mind, and you are that mind, dreaming the most elaborate, compelling, and totally convincing virtual reality ever created, which you call your life. Thank you so much for watching. If this has you seeing the world a little differently, if your brain feels just a little bit melted in the best possible way, then please show your support. Go ahead and like this video, and definitely subscribe for more fascinating explainers from Plato Baggins. We have covered a ton of ground, and I genuinely want to know what you think. Does this idea resonate with you? Do you have your own questions or maybe some counter-arguments? Please leave your thoughts and comments below to keep the discussion going. Have a great day.